And we are on. So welcome to our fourth lightning talk of the Drupal menu initiative. Today we're just going to do like a session of just talking about what's happening, what are we working on, how can you help? My name is Batti and I'm just helping organizing, for example, this one. With us today we have like Gabe and Theodore, who are officially the initiative leads. We also have Sally, a JavaScript core contributor and active in this initiative, as well as Liam. We also have a couple of great visitors, contributors, and I'm really looking forward just to see like an open discussion. And if you have a question, please just ask here. Also put it in the chat. We also have a link to a Slido, but I don't think we need to like use it now. But if we see something coming in there, it's also fine. So maybe starting with just chatting a little bit, I have the first question. Gabe and Theodore, also known as not_. Can you maybe a little bit tell us just what is happening now with the initiative? What are you all working on?
Right. So we're actually still in the preparation phase. So we started some proof of concept and some work around what technically we're going to need to do. But mostly we've been focusing on setting up the environment, the context in which the initiative can succeed. So it was a first part, a big part of it was, making sure that we had the right people on the team. So now we have a pretty great team with you, Buddy, Liam, Gabe, Sally, and myself. So that's solid. So we can move on to the next thing, which is more what are we going to do in the initiative? There was some talk. So Dries talked about one thing, then we refined it to have a clearer plan on what we need to do. We put out a survey thanks to Liam a couple of weeks ago. We're having some pretty nice response. So we can help, that will help us focus the priorities on what we need to do. And now we're starting to build the roadmap, and actually Gabe has been, going forward on that on the more technical side. So if you can maybe present where we're at, Gabe.
Yeah, so I think the biggest blocker to getting technical issues figured out is just figuring out what exactly we want to build, what use cases we want to solve for, what features it's going to need to have, and what people expect. That survey is hopefully going to answer what people expect. And then we have to think about what features we're going to support and in what order. And I think that'll be informed by the survey a bit too. Last week, we kind of came up with the two use cases that we thought we ought to kind of focus on first and consider whether or not they have two different implementations or the same one. And we're looking for feedback on that. There are probably use cases that we didn't think of. And so it would be great to have feedback on, does this make sense? Does this two-way of kind of thinking about how Drupal might build a decoupled menu and how it might be used make sense? So it's really kind of in that gathering info that we need help.
So Gabe, when you talk about two issues, which issues are those? Is it I'm going to share my screen so we can look at it. Maybe you can guide me through if I have the correct issues on the screen. So when you talk about two issues,
yet,
it's on the way.
There, I see it. Okay.
So this would probably be the one of the issues that you're talking about, correct?
Yeah. If you see the link that says meta at HDP, the parent issue. So it's in this issue that we tried to kind of set the framework for how we were thinking about things. And we talk about two distinct use cases. And then there are two child issues of that, which then go into, okay, given that those use cases are valid and we think we understand them, how can we solve them? What's the actual implementation? And then we're getting feedback on that. So did that answer your question?
So these are the related issues here, correct?
Can you click on the meta issue
Meta issue?
in the issue summary? There we go. So the 2 child issues are right there in the sidebar.
Yeah.
Well, there should be 2 child issues. We should fix that.
So if you're a contributor and you just like you wanna put your thoughts on it, this is just then where you would go and you would check out these issues and just put your thoughts on it and read it through. There's a lot of things that has been discussed. Could you give us a short summary of it, or?
Yeah. So I think there's 2 ways that I think people might think about menus, and one of them is probably more common in the decoupled world today, and that's something that I think Nod kind of referred to as an app shell. But the idea is, you're building your app, your front end app, and you think about, I just have a menu, no matter what page I'm on, the menu is going to be the same, and I just want to download the menu. I want to know the links, I want to know the hierarchy, the structure of it, and then I'm going to dump it into a component and render it. And then as I navigate from page to page, the only thing that's going to change is the content component of your application. The other way to think about menus is maybe more the way that Drupal thinks about them today in a coupled setup, which is they're contextual. You create a menu, but they don't actually show up on any page until you place them with a menu block. And then you'd say things like, if I have a product node, I want to show this secondary menu for maybe shopping departments. But if I'm on a press release node, I'm not going to show that secondary menu. So it really depends on what's the currently viewed thing, what's the current route, to depend on what you're going to show. And then you might have different rules about the depth that you're going to show. And then there are a few more things like access, which I think they could be related to both, but it's probably more the second case, which is sometimes you're going to have links that go to routes that only an authenticated user has, and an anonymous user does not. And so in those cases, you want to not show that link at all. And so how do you communicate that? If you're doing the first use case and it's global and static, you might have to do some kind of secondary access checking, or have an endpoint to help you find that out. Or you could just kind of keep asking for that menu, and if somebody logs in, then you download it, and it has the link that wasn't there before, or maybe it's not. These are all, now I'm starting to get into implementation, but they're the kinds of things that we're thinking about.
Yeah, that's very helpful. Do we have, Theodor, do you want to add to that?
Yeah, it's just to go back a bit before, because we talked about how we got there, what we're doing right now. But one thing we didn't mention about the context of the initiative is the work that's going on Drupal.org to facilitate what we need from Drupal.org for all this. And this is something Sally has been working on the past few weeks. So the DA created a general purpose type of project. We used to have a distribution theme project, and now we have a general purpose type. And this is for publishing JavaScript components that will end up, on NPM. At least that's the plan, and that's what we are working toward. But especially Sally, these days, and that the DA enabled GitLab CI/CD, to use what we have and not have a Drupal specific stack just for the deployment and all the workflows. So this is something that's pretty nice as well, to use what we have and not build on top of Drupal specific things. And hopefully we'll get the CI/CD stuff enabled on more projects, contrib projects, even PHP ones. But for now, it's just for the JavaScript stuff. And yeah, the Drupal Association has been really helpful in getting that set up and up to, good enough to use. Yeah, so I don't know if Sally, you want to chat about that.
You could show one of the pipelines, maybe, in the merge requests, whoever's sharing. So if you go to the merge requests, the top one there, run test with GitLab CI. And then you should see the top there, pipeline number 30 passed. Oh, go. Oh, yeah, no one knows it. I think you have to click the number 30 on the left. The UI is not too good right now. And then you have to go into the test. And yeah, that's all our tests running, which is very cool. So we're just finishing some details on that, like, are we going to enable making sure that the branch is up to date with the main branch before we can merge it in and everything passes and things like that. But yeah, that's working and basically there. So our next step is adding another pipeline so that when we create a tag, we can push something to NPM. And yeah, as Theodore said, the DA have been really helpful getting this all set up for us. There's a couple of like special things about this project that we need to figure out how to make generally available. For example, having secrets. So we need a token to allow us to push this to NPM. And right now we have to hard code that in our project by asking the DA. So they're working on lots of little things like that to help everyone use these tools.
Yeah, hopefully we will get it will be possible for people who today do development on GitHub for Drupal specific things to do that on Drupal.org now. And so they will be able to use the commit credits and use that in the rankings and that kind of thing. So that's the goal in a broader sense than just this initiative. It's to make Drupal.org more friendly towards JavaScript developers, basically.
So I would like to stop here and see if we have any questions or any thoughts, or if anybody wants to just put in something.
I do have
Jean-Louis.
Yeah, I do have a question, or it's not actually it's a question. How deep do we want to go with the decoupled menus until we think it's good enough for a release? I mean, menus or any other, well, we're speaking about menus now, but menus are a really complex kind of ecosystem in which you can have as many menus as you want. I mean, we can be speaking about primary main navigation, we can be talking about secondary navigation, we can be talking about multiple footer menus, we can be talking about user menu if the user is logged in and he gets a profile, blah, 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 blah. But I think that I don't know how deep do we want to go into, okay, that's it, that's a wrap, let's move on. And if it's just enough to say, okay, let's say the first release that we will do will be, okay, we will get just the regular menus out. Doesn't matter if there are going to be markdown files, if it's going to be a JSON output, if it's going to be a REST export, whichever the format is. And then we'll say, okay, phase 2, we go with user menus or authentication or any other variables, because I have the feeling that if we scope too big, then we will get lost somewhere and get stuck. Because, I mean, I think all of you are contributors to the Drupal community, and all of you know how long it takes for one single issue, a string change, to get submitted into core, because too many heads, too many minds, too many ideas. And I think we should be focusing just only one. Okay, let's get menus out. I got a menu in Drupal. It's not the user menu, it's not the secondary menu, but I get a menu. Let's ship it, and okay, now we can just move on into the user account menu. What I think of is that, sorry, if a lot of us have survived not using Drupal menus, decoupling Drupal for these last 2, 3, 4 years, I think we can hold 1 more year just to get the rest of the menus, but try to deliver the best we can in the short amount of time. So after I said all of that, so yeah, the question was, how deep do we want to go with like first release?
If I can chime in from the Umami experience, we see many times how certain things trying to get to perfection. So then something pretty simple takes 2 years because of that perfection. Now, probably within a month or 2, we could get already an upgrade that give people already better experience. It wouldn't be perfect. We can work the next year and 10 month already on all the bits and pieces. So I don't know if it's necessarily a big decision like that, but more of like an intentional state of mind of, are we okay with delivering things that are already giving certain value before we get into all the perfectioning of all the little details?
So yeah, I have ideas around that. So to me, well, personally, I don't know about Gabriel, but he will tell us later. For me, it's all about, is it simple enough to use, to get the menu data and to use it in your application? So to me, that's what we need to answer. And we can do that incrementally. I'm not expecting us to hold off on anything until it's perfect. What might change is the amount of kind of marketing, you could say, we're doing around that. Because if it's something good but not great, we might just want to, to talk with Drupal folks that already use Drupal as a decoupled application to say, okay, this is available now. You can use it. So tell us if it's good enough or not. And once it's good enough and they think it's much simpler than what they used to do, we can say to people outside the Drupal community, hey, have a look at this. Drupal is good. The experience using Drupal is good. So check it out. But the second step will not be made with something that is, kind of working but not great. It needs to be streamlined for us to talk to people outside the community, basically. And it kind of depend on what we call shipping as well. What's the definition of that?
Yeah, I agree with all of that. I think the only thing I would add is that I would hope that we would have an understanding of where what's the North Star, where are we trying to get to? And even if we ship in phases and we have a simpler implementation, we understand how we are at least going to get to the next phase, so that we don't, create a stumbling block for ourselves in the future.
So could you maybe, Gabe, on that, asking you the direct question, like, what could be like a first version, like, of a menu? Would that just be that you just have the link and the title and that's it, or the where would you think that it would be good to set the mark?
Yeah, I mean, it's actually really simple to just get a menu and all its links and all its hierarchy and put it into JSON. It's no big deal. You have its machine name and you ask for it. What's less easy is understanding the context. Is it on a product page? Is the user logged in? Some of that is simple, and we could easily do that. So I think the first step would definitely be that first use case of, I've got a menu that's not going to change from page to page, and I'm not, where it appears is going to be hard coded in the application or the client side. And then as we go on, I think we need to think about, in the later phases, how do we give the power that content editors used to have, deciding where a menu showed up or in what context it appeared? How how do we give that power back to those users who don't know how to code and who don't want to call up their front-end developer every time they want to change, their menu? So I mean, obviously they can change the structure, the hierarchy of it, but what's kind of cool about Drupal is that you click together these blocks to build really complicated things. And I think that's obviously something that has to come in a later phase, but I hope we plan for that.
Yeah. I sent sorry.
Go ahead.
I just sent a link to the release cycle. We want to maybe keep in mind and create for us some destinations, because May 2nd is 9.2 alpha being released, and October 25th is 9.3 being released. And usually these dates would be really good times to implement certain things. I believe 9.4 that comes out together with Drupal 10 is going to be already a locked version where nothing new comes in. So maybe we can aim towards these 2 dates and figure out what can we do with each one.
That's great. We were just having a conversation amongst ourselves last week about kind of target dates, and I didn't even think about the core release cycle, but that's a brilliant idea. Thank you.
Yeah, that is a good idea. I guess one thing also I would add is, a large part of the work for this initiative, as it was, even understood very early on, is that there's a lot of things that we need to get in place to even make this kind of project a success, such as all the work that the DO has been doing with, the integrations with the CI/CD pipelines and whatnot, and being able to publish to NPM. Like, all of these things are like a lot of little things that you might not see on the outside, but are certainly part of the initiative because they're like dependencies for the initiative. There's also some core issues as well that have been a bit of a block, that those are things that are, that are getting resolved in the process as well. So I think like a large part of perhaps our first phase is, just making sure we have the policies, we have the stumbling blocks out of the way, as Gabe said, just having a lot of the pieces so that the future iterations will be much quicker and much more substantial. But yeah, I think it's really worthwhile to make sure we do know where that goal is, and then just make steps towards it. Yeah.
So that's very, Gabe, you're actually putting in, for those who are watching, because you can't see the text, so you're saying like we're acting like we haven't already done phase 1, but we actually have. And this is maybe like reflecting on what Liam was saying, that there's a lot of stuff that has been done. Correct, Gabe?
Yeah, exactly. We shouldn't discount like the impact that the changes that we've already done have kind of instigated. The ability to have a general project on core is going to have repercussions for years. And even though, that go beyond the decoupled menus initiative, right? Like Drush, if they wanted to, they could come to Drupal.org. And we can have projects that aren't just modules anymore. And I think that might help us see new innovation. We have 2 provisional core committers now, Theodore and Sally, and hopefully that, and the ability to have standalone projects is going to change the way we do JavaScript in Drupal.
What, did we lose his? You somehow
no sound.
got.
Yeah.
But it was still a good end. But Gabe, we lost your last sentence. Oh,
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I got a phone call and my Bluetooth took it over. So I'm not really sure what standalone JavaScript projects are going to lead to precisely, but I don't think it's going to lead to bad things. So.
Well, you never know with JavaScript. Yeah.
Well, we could host Go stuff in those general projects,
So are there any more questions from anyone here? about like direct questions at anyone? So what would be actually the next step, or you know, or maybe let's just put out one question, you know, like what would be an optimal thing for this initiative? You know, asking you directly, Gabe and Theodore. I know that we are still working on the roadmap, but like in a dream scenario, just to finish this up here, you know, in a dream scenario, where do you see this initiative leading to? When is it ending? And what is happening? How are you seeing then? Because there has been a little bit of discussions in our lightning talks before that, you know, what's going to be next? You know, is it going to be views? Is it going to be authentication? What is it going to be? So could you maybe just give us your thoughts? They don't have to be written in stone, but we would like to hear just a little bit, like, what's your dream? Gabe, maybe you start.
Yeah. I'm going to go beyond the scope of the decoupled menus initiative, because we're just going to solve menus. But what I hope is that we get a snowball rolling, that we look at what Drupal is today for building websites, and we think about what it could be for a digital landscape that's totally different. People don't just have websites. They have TV apps, they have kiosks, they have digital signage, they have all those kinds of things that at the end of the day, like, humans interact with and non-coders want to create an online presence with. Whether you're like a museum owner or you're a garbage truck company, like, you're gonna want to use the internet to have interactions with your customers. And so if we can figure out how to let Drupal serve those needs, serve those applications that's not just in a website, I want Drupal to be able to do that. And we get really far with creating navigation, you know, the ability to structure how a user moves through the experience you're creating. And then when we add on authentication, or we add on curated collections, i.e. views, then we start to think you can build all kinds of cool things. You can download Drupal and you can create like the prototype of Airbnb in a few weeks. And that's going to be really cool, because right now you have to spend, you know, $1 million to build something like that. So that's kind of like my dream.
Yeah, on mine it's a bit different. I guess it's also because of the context where you're in, Gabriel, that you have those goals in mind. To me, I mean, it's going beyond the decoupled initiative, but I see Drupal as a tool to improve the way we communicate with each other. So it's not only in a consumer business relationship. And one part of this is today it's hard to get Drupal set up for personal things. Like, if I want to do a website, a smallish website with a couple of pages, I'm not going to use Drupal, right? Because it's kind of heavy, kind of hard to put in place. There's a lot of stuff to set up. And it's not really practical for this type of things. But if we look at what the indie web, you know, is starting to become, there's a bunch of modules that are integrated to Drupal with that. What I hope for is that Drupal becomes easier to use. So, you know, have something that's prepackaged that you can deploy easily in a bunch of places. You know, the exact form that will take, I don't know, but that's what I hope for. Like, just get a zip file somewhere, put that on a server, and ta-da, you get your Drupal website available. You get APIs, you get a great content structure kind of framework. And I want, you know, the decoupled menu initiative also to get the ball rolling on how to make it easier for people to use. And that goes through the documentation stuff. And also making sure that what we build is not, you know, it's not good only for people with a big development team. basically. So kind of come back to the roots of it. And that's
Yeah, that's
usually
great.
for blogs, right? Yeah.
Yeah, we have a question from Sharik, or he wants to add something to this. Please.
Yes, I want to add to this. So my vision for the decoupled Drupal initiative is that we can build a kind of sub framework kind of that we will useful for integrating third party APIs like some JSON data and JSON coming from some APIs, and we can easily integrate host or integrate into Drupal with or without like integration with the Drupal API, like we want to check whether user is on security or not. So that should be able to be we will be able to do much easier because the potential is very complex. We need to go to a lot of things. So maybe we can have a kind of JS framework on the top of Drupal that we can use to integrate those kind of applications.
We can have there's Drugs.js. There's also a Next.js module that came out like a few days ago. So is it that kind of thing that you want to see get better?
Yes, I think there are a lot of POC kind of items available in the community. But yeah, we need to try all those items, and we just need to make a stabilization. We need to define one approach. Like with the decouple menu initiative, I think we can do that. Maybe we can try with the Drugs or maybe something else or whatever. That option we try, experiment, and decide. So that will be more kind of generic approach, like opinionated approach for doing all the things in a certain way.
Yeah, opinionated in Drupal is not not really the way we go typically, but that's that's necessary for ease of use, I guess. So we will need to find a balance there. Yeah, definitely.
Yes.
So maybe to just like, so what is going to happen next? So like you see that you can make impact by looking at these issues about like decisions on the API response. That can definitely help out, right?
Sally, you wanted to say something?
Oh, yes, I was going to say that I would like Drupal to regain its place in like the cool list of CMSs, because when things are old, people discount them, even though they still are like way better than other things out there. So yeah, I would just like to kind of raise the profile of Drupal a bit in the CMS world.
Yeah, and
sorry, Liam. So you mean, Sally, just to take you on this? So were you just saying like Drupal has already been like doing this for a long time, but somehow we are not being recognized to be really like a good headless CMS because we don't have some things not like documentation and all this stuff. So we want to place on that map. So we are like definitely the headless CMS that you should be using because it is just the best one out there, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's the best for some things. But yeah, I mean, like, especially owning your own data, I think is great. And especially like for organizations that can't pay huge licensing fees to content management systems based on like page views and things like that. I think Drupal's really great for things like that. But yeah, sort of give the power back to the users of the CMSs rather than all the cloud-hosted ones.
Yeah, I think we all can agree with that. And Liam, you also wanted to say something, right?
Yeah. Actually, in terms of the being cool thing, that's actually quite an interesting point. I mean, I'm quite new to Drupal, and there may be a reason for that. I think the reason is that there wasn't really you had WordPress, and they sort of stole the spotlight 10 years ago, and that just sort of and it's only recently that I've discovered how crazy cool Drupal can be and how powerful it is, and I guess that sort of leads to, you know, my vision is I'm so big on the idea of, my philosophy is very much that, you know, if we can reduce the moving parts, less things can break. And I feel like that's certainly something that not just Drupal struggles with, but something that we can definitely address in this initiative, is trying to just reduce the amount of steps involved to build a decoupled site. And this is a huge step towards that, which, you know, right now we've got a lot of decoupled sites, but they're using this tool and that tool. They're using, you know, Gatsby Next. They're using all kinds of frameworks. And I think that my vision would be to get to a point where, yeah, you can use those frameworks if you select them and you decide you want to use them, but an option where you don't have to, an option where you can, you know, you can have less moving parts and still accomplish something really cool, really usable, and powerful still, because Drupal is very powerful at its core. So that's my vision there. Yeah.
That's Drupal is powerful. That's our last words today, right?
It's powerful, not quite cool yet, but it will be.
It has always been cool, and
the community is incredible. Absolutely amazing community. So yeah.
And we always say, like, you know, something that has existed for 20 years. You know, it maybe doesn't have to be always the coolest out of the thing, but it just has to work and be awesome. So I think, like, the most important thing is that, you know, what the initiative is just like saying now, taking a little bit of a summary. You know, there is like groundwork being done. There's a lot of things happening. So we will expect that maybe now in the end of February, beginning of March, that we will be starting to maybe have like a little bit more of you know, things out there that people can, hopefully there's going to be answers to all of these questions that are out there, correct? And we definitely expect that DrupalCon North America in April, that you know, we're going to have some fun there, probably going to organize a couple of buffs. We're going to have a couple of sessions, I think, or at least like try to get some more sessions in. We are even thinking about, like, you know, doing something, you know, a little bit more fun and interactive, see if people want to participate in some kind of gaming around, you know, let's see how far we are, if we can maybe start doing some more work there. So most important now is that that everyone just like keeps on coming and helping us out and look at the issue queue. We are going to put out the results from the survey. We got 120 something responses, mainly from Drupal people, but people using Drupal, I think 80%, but there is also a lot of people that are not using Drupal. So we are just analyzing this at the moment, and we'll put out the information hopefully in next week. So if there is, just asking one more round, is there any more questions? It's always, you have to wait a little bit when you do this to see if people find the mute button, right? I think it is really good for now. So thank you to all the initiative leads, to Sally, Liam, Gabe, and Theodore for joining. Miro, thank you for providing the meeting, and all of you also just for participating in the initiative, because you are all active members of the initiative. So thank you all very much. And I think we will see each other on Slack until next time then.
See you. Thank you very much.
Bye.
See ya.